Welcome to the Channel 17 Stump the Chumps program on this October 21st, 2021. Stump the Chumps is a program that goes back to the 1990s. We talk about Burlington trivia and what it was when milk was 19 cents a quart and pot. Well, that was a container that was the best definition of pot was a container. Different today. Anyway, I'm Bill Keogh, your co-host of Stump the Chumps, and with me on this panel is my co-host Joey Donovan and her brother Jim Leddy. Now, this is the Leddy family, and you know Jim as a state senator. Joey was in the House of Representatives for a long time. I served in the House with Joey. So you get three politicians here. But the three of us have grown up in Burlington, and we've got a history of going to local schools, Rice, Cathedral, remember Cathedral? And
Mount St. Mary's.
And Joey, I went to Mount St. Mary's. Jim, did you go to Mount St. Mary's?
No, I didn't. That was an all-girls school, K through 12, except they took boys through kindergarten through second grade.
And I was one of those
You
guys.
were one of them.
I was one of those guys.
Because you grew up in Mansfield Avenue, right?
I grew up in Mansfield Avenue, right across the street. So,
Bill,
go ahead.
I just was going to say, this is the first live show that we've done in how long?
Probably 2 or 3 months.
Even, no, live here in the studio.
Oh,
It's
live, yeah.
like 2 years.
Yep, that's right, yep. No, well, we had the little pandemic that's happened for the last couple of years, so.
And we've all survived so far.
Yeah. So what'd you do in Mount St. Mary's? Did you
I did
ski
that-
over there or slide over there? Or
Well,
did you go, I mean, where did you grow up? Where did the family grow up?
We grew up on North Prospect Street. In our early years, when we were young children, we grew up on Stanford Road. They call it the New North End. It was just the North End then. And
Off the avenue.
Off the avenue, and we started off going to Thayer School, the original Thayer School,
Yeah.
and before they built the new one. And then our family got too big for the house we were in, and we moved into in town, as they called it. And my parents bought a home on North Prospect Street, so that's where we were raised, on North Prospect Street.
So,
But can I just say that
You
when
may.
the house that we moved out of on Stanford Road, and when Jimmy and I were first living there, Oakland Terrace was just being developed, and we grew up in a neighborhood of cellar holes because there was so much development going. But one of the reasons that we moved in town was because there wasn't room for us all in our home, and yet the two families that followed us had more children than we did, and also had more insight. One, my father sold the house to Francis Peisch, and the Peisches had a large family of probably 8 or 9 children.
9 children, yeah.
And Francis was a very, very brilliant lawyer, and his wife Mary was lovely, and they were so innovative they decided to raise the roof and put a third decker on.
wow.
So I think my father wanted to come home to lunch, and he couldn't do that staying on Stanford Road. So it really wasn't about the family and the size of the house.
So, you traversed over in Mount St. Mary's?
No, I never. I never went to school there, but
You're right.
in the wintertime, they had a wonderful sliding hill over Mount St. Mary's on one of the hills right beside the convent, and you could slide down, and if you were really good and got a good run, you could go down what was called the Snake Trail, and it would meander through the woods all the way to the old dump on Riverside Avenue.
A dump on Riverside Avenue?
Avenue, yeah. It was
What
a
was
long
co-
walk back.
What kind of a dump was that?
Dump.
A city dump?
It was the city dump. There was one, I think that took the place of the one that was on North Bend Street.
Okay.
So you could actually ride your bike and walk down and go on the
Right.
bike path along the Northern Connector now. But there was a dump there, and then it moved when it got, I guess, too filled down there. In the interval, they moved it to Riverside Avenue.
Okay, now, were you...
We had those woods, and we also had the Mackenzie Woods behind our house. That was another woodland that you could do great explorations. But there was a big, huge sand slide in the what was that called?
The dump.
Was it the dump? Because we would take cardboard and slide down that sand hill. And my mother, we were forbidden to do so because she was so afraid there'd be a collapse and we would be smothered to death. But we at least I didn't see the wisdom of her ways back then, because it was just so glorious and so much fun. But Jimmy also he went to Mount St. Mary's in another way. He was one of the great altar servers to the Sisters of Mercy.
I was just going to ask that question.
At the break of day, and that was when that convent was 200 plus in their community.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I used to play. First of all, if you've got a story about old time Burlington you want to share with us, give us a call, 862-3966. That's 862-3966. Ask a question about the old days of Burlington, or jump into this conversation, because we're going everywhere with this conversation.
Well, I don't think we can leave the sliding era of the neighborhood without mentioning Mary Fletcher Hill.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That and the Country Club were the two golden standards for sliding. Mount St. Mary's was closer, but it couldn't touch Mary Fletcher or the Country Club.
Now, Mary Fletcher Hill.
Yeah.
I used to live on Colchester Avenue growing up, and you used to go from top of Mary Fletcher Hill all the way down, and you were good if you went behind Ira Allen School.
Which meant you crossed.
Which made you cross
Colchester
Avenue.
Yeah.
So my mother put the no slide zone there,
Yeah.
but did I adhere to it? I don't think so. I mean, when you got going down that Fletcher Hill, it was kind of too bad when the hospital put the parking garage in there.
Right.
But
Well, that was part of the whole debate of that parking garage. Was there were many Burlington citizens who were against it because it was taking Hospital Hill away.
yeah, that was, now you went down in cardboard, you had a toboggan, and what was the name of the popular sled in those days?
Flyer,
Flexible Flyer.
flexible flyer, American Flyer.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now, you talked about, Joey brought up about serving in Mount St. Mary's. Well, I used to, as I said, lived on Mansfield Avenue for a while. So we'd play football in that corner lot at Loomis Street and
Oh, yeah.
Mansfield Avenue. Go there, and I'd be all sweaty, and I'd go in for the 5 o'clock benediction to do my gig there, and then come back out and continue the game. So, Joey, those were the days when I was a good boy, okay?
Well, I used to serve Mass at the convent twice a week. And if you were an altar boy and lived in close proximity to the convent, you got that duty. So I also did double duty at the synagogue, because we lived across the street from Mojave Zedek, and I frequently would on the Sabbath help out some of the Jewish neighbors by lighting their stove and doing little things for them, because they had to keep holy the Lord's Day.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, it was
a great neighborhood.
It was a very diverse neighborhood in those days. I mean, diversity we never had any people of color, but they were certainly significant Jewish families and Catholic families and Protestant families. And the Mackenzies lived around the corner, and they were a big family of 11 children. The McNeils lived a couple of blocks away. The Canes were living near us. It was the Mahoneys. We had several families of our cousins, the Mahoneys.
The Sheehy family, several of the families my sister just mentioned, all had 10 or more children, which was not unusual back then.
It's funny. I have a list. Somehow I got a list of families like Vericchiones and all the ones that you mentioned.
Right.
And you're right. They had anywhere from 8 to 11 or 12 kids. And remember Father Bill Hammond, who
Yes.
adopted a dozen kids,
Yeah.
and he lived out in the avenue. But today it's a lot different. You got 2 or 3. Maybe we had 5. You had,
Right.
and so anyway, so it's all that has evolved.
It has.
So where did you go to grammar school?
Well, I went to Thayer School till second
Yeah.
grade when we moved in town. And then I went to Cathedral Grammar School. Most of the places where I was educated no longer exist, the buildings, physical buildings.
Yep.
Cathedral Grammar School was on the corner of Cherry Street and St. Paul Street. 700 kids in 3 stories. With 30, 40 kids in a classroom.
And Jimmy, what would you say that building, how old was that when you were?
Oh man,
It was probably built in the 1870s or so, and this is back in the early 50s.
you remember the fire drills that they had? You go out in the fire escape and you look down in the schoolyard.
Oh, there's a 3 stories down on an exterior fire escape. Don't look down. Right. I remember once we were in the playground at Cathedral Grammar School, and there was by a playground. You had 2 rusty basketball hoops and a lot of dirt and rocks. And in the wintertime, I remember we were out, I think it was lunch break, and the nun, Sister Eugenia, she taught 7th or 8th grade. She came out on the 3rd floor fire escape to ring a bell and say it's time for class. And one of my friends, as she was ringing the bell, let loose with a snowball.
Ooh.
Took her bonnet right off.
Really?
For the first time, we saw what a sister looked like without her bonnet.
How'd you get along with the nuns?
It depended. I remember when I was in high school, I didn't do well academically. I was challenged, as they say. And I had a French teacher who also oversaw the altar boys.
Sister Fabian?
No, this was Sister Leocadia.
Oh, I remember Sister Leocadia.
And she taught...
Joey's rolling her eyes.
Well, she taught French in school, and then she took on the altar boy duty. And I thought I was in her good graces until I got my report card. And on my report card, I'm a sophomore in high school now, and French, there was a 70 was the passing grade, and I had a 70, but there was a minus sign in front of it. And I went to her and I said, Sister, I said, I don't quite understand what 70 with the minus sign means. And she said, well, James, let me explain to you what it means. She said, you failed the course. You failed the course. But I was the last teacher to write the grades in the marking book, and I noticed that you'd failed several other courses.
Jimmy, you're not supposed to do true confessionals.
Well, the statute of limitations has expired. So she said, you actually failed the course, but I noticed you had failed several others, and I didn't want to cause your mother and father any more pain.
Oh, man.
I said, thank you, Sister.
Sister Leocadia was a very proud woman of French heritage, and I took great delight many decades later when I was substitute teaching at Mater Christi. And one of the perks to teaching there was you got to have lunch with the sisters in the dining room, and Sister Leocadia was the chef, and she loved cooking. And so I had great joy one day to ask one of the sisters to go in and tell Sister Leocadia that Joey Leddy was teaching French that week.
Ooh.
Which I'm sure she came out and just shook her head. She didn't think that was a possibility.
But, you know,
So when you brought that report card home, what was the reception when Bernard and your mother looked at that? What did she tell James?
well, I brought it to my mother.
Why?
For good reason. She had a heart, and she understood me. And my dad did, not that he was a cruel father at all, but he was all business when it came to school.
Oh, I'm sure.
And you do your homework, you pay attention, you don't get in trouble in school, and don't bring home a card like you just brought home. So,
And he had been an incredibly strong student himself, and really looked to education as the way out. He grew up on a farm in Underhill, and he had higher ambitions. So he loved learning.
Just for clarification, their dad was Judge Bernard Leddy, who was a strong candidate to be the first Democratic governor in Vermont. And he was, as I said, a federal judge. And Leddy Park in Burlington was named after Bernard Leddy, who served very, very well to the city and on the Parks and Recreation Commission. Okay, going with that background, I wanted to get that across. Sorry, guys. Okay, Joey, how'd you get along with the nuns? Okay, that's a Sister Leocadia. Did you get in any trouble? Were you punished at all?
There were times that things didn't probably go as well as my parents would have liked them to have gone, but I think I really valued so many of the relationships I had with the sisters, because as an adult, I've been very involved with them and the good work they've done throughout the city and the state.
Yeah.
And I really treasure the relationships I've had with so many of them. So it probably, I didn't value them as much when I was a student as I grew up and appreciated them
It's
more.
called maturity.
I guess that's what it's called.
Well, I think it's very important to just to echo what Joey just said. We laugh or recall days with the nuns as our teachers that we can laugh at it, but they held us accountable.
Absolutely.
But the Sisters of Mercy made a world of difference in the lives of thousands
All
of
of
young
us.
people growing up in this community. They were outstanding. I had Sister Elizabeth Camden as a young nun in fourth grade.
Wow.
And Sister Janice Ryan
Yep.
worked with. They were young nuns, and they were teaching, and both of them went on to be college presidents.
And state officials.
And both of them state officials.
Yes.
Sister Elizabeth, Secretary of Human Services.
Yep.
And I think Sister Janice was Deputy Commissioner of the Department of Corrections. So they made a contribution, not only in the classroom, but in the lives of Vermonters.
Yes, and now I'm wondering what's going to happen to Mount St. Mary's now.
I don't know. It's still a beautiful piece
It
of
is
property.
a beautiful piece of property, and as an altar boy, remember how those marble floors and those little stalls I just hate to see those ever be torn down.
I'm very sad to have learned that the beautiful chapel at Mount St. Mary's is not on any historic registry.
Oh, it's not.
And I keep on thinking I haven't done what I should have done to inquire about how do we go about that. It is an absolutely beautiful,
Yes.
beautiful building.
Yeah, and it's really should be a tourist attraction.
Yes,
really.
yeah,
It's
it's
It
gorgeous.
should be a shrine.
okay. Yeah, yeah. Well, we have a lot of
Yes,
strong, good memories there.
we
And
do.
At that time, I
Maybe
was
we
very,
can start that committee right here tonight to do something about that, because it is remarkable. And the Pine Grove, and walking down in the Pine Grove is where the Sisters of Mercy have their cemetery, and
Yes.
that's still a remarkable thing. And some of them lived to be very, very elderly women.
Yeah.
And it's just remarkable what a big community
And
it
I
was.
used to play basketball in that little
Yes.
gymnasium.
Oh, the bandbox.
Was it the bandbox?
Oh my gosh, it's small.
We used to try to break in. I mean, in order to play basketball, we'd climb the wall and try to open the windows and break. Isn't that something? You have
Yeah.
to break into a place to play basketball?
We used to do that at Memorial Auditorium.
Yeah, okay.
That changed when one of my friends, their father was a custodian there.
Oh, that's
And we would, Marty Fitzgerald and Mr. Fitzgerald was the custodian. We always found a way to get in Memorial Auditorium on a weekend.
You climbed the outside wall.
We went through the back door. Mr. Fitzgerald told us how to get in.
Tell us about the baseball in your backyard
Well,
on Prospect Street.
Well, we had a good-sized yard, and it became a neighborhood playground. We had a lot of big families in the neighborhood. The Brodairs from North Willard Street, I think there were 11 Brodairs. There were 10 Allards on North Street, 2 sets of Mackenzie families, 11 in each, and the Rocks, So a lot of kids came over to our backyard to play basketball because we had a light over the hoop, football, and then baseball, and a very small baseball. We had ground rule double. So, if you hit the ball more than 40 feet down the third baseline, it was in the garden.
Okay. Whose garden?
My father's.
Okay.
But if you hit it down the first baseline and it went into the Gladstone flower garden, the question then was, who's going to go get the ball?
Why?
Well, the beautiful gardens.
Yeah, Mrs. Gladstone had absolutely gorgeous.
Well, so were you the guy to go get the ball?
Oh, no, Tommy Rock.
Why Tommy Rock?
He was a fast runner.
So if Mr. Gladstone came out and said, "Get out of my garden,"
They
Tommy would run out of his backyard with the ball in
With
hand.
the ball. He didn't come back without the ball.
Oh, so you wouldn't let him back in unless he had
Well,
the
that
ball.
was the deal.
Why don't you get another baseball?
Well, that was a problem.
Yeah, there's usually only one ball.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you watch Major League Baseball today, if a speck of dirt gets on a ball, they threw in a new one. We'd go for a week, 2 weeks with one ball.
Now, I like this story because when I was growing up in Burlington about baseball, we made do with what we had. We had once the cover left the baseball, we put black tape around
tape.
it, and we continued to play with it. And with bats, we'd get a bat from the Burlington Cardinals or something like
Yeah.
that. We put screws in it,
Screws in it. They're broken bats that we put a screw in.
and then tape the handle because you didn't want to. So,
You know where we
and
used
that was we made do with what we had. We didn't have much, so we had to make do, find what we could do, and make the best of it. So apparently, you
what?
guys did the same thing.
a better a better baseball field for the neighborhood was, our backyard was kind of the rookie league. The better field was at Pomeroy School.
Oh yeah, that was.
Oh,
That was the gold standard.
okay.
You could play ball down there, and it was great. And we used to.
Where was that in Pomeroy? Because Pomeroy
was
was,
on
a
the
big
back-
building.
Booth Street.
On the corner of Booth and
Well, I know
North
where
Street.
Pomeroy was, but I
Yeah.
can't think of where the baseball field
Oh,
was. down
it's
there.
towards Loomis Street.
Towards Loomis
Okay,
Street.
okay.
Yeah.
And we had a couple of things happen there. We'd have so many kids playing ball down there. Sometimes you'd have 12, 13 kids in the field. And I remember Eddie McKenzie, Murph McKenzie, was killed in Vietnam.
Yes.
The neighborhood kid, grew up on Isham Street. And Murph was a little brother to all of us. His older brother, Mickey, was in my class, and we were all, and he just followed us around as a little boy, followed us around. And one day, Murph, we were all, his job usually at Pomeroy was to climb the fence and ask Mrs. Courtney if we'd get the ball
Oh,
back.
Mrs. Courtney.
If she
man.
let us have the ball back.
Oh.
One day,
Kitty?
well, and her mother.
Okay.
And one day Murph is out, and he's out at second base. And his brother comes out and said, well, Murph, what are you doing here? He said, I'm playing second base. He said, I told you to go to second base. You aren't playing second base. You are second base. So we filled the field, and we had great times.
So how did you get all those kids together? Did you have to say, oh, we'll meet you tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock?
You didn't have to put, everybody knew where to go and what time to be there. If you were late, you didn't play.
Oh, so you had to be there on time,
You had to be
whatever
there.
time that was. So
And you flip the bat, and you go up and choose sides.
how about this, like this?
Yes.
Bottle
Huh?
caps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No bottle caps. You had to
What do you
guys,
mean bottle cap?
That was
bottle
when
caps
you
was
do
when
the
you
top.
topped it off.
Oh.
Top of
You
the
never
bat.
did that?
Oh, yes, yeah.
Yeah,
We had Dave Hartnett here not long ago. We were
he'd be
talking
good.
about that.
He'd be good.
Yeah.
And then, Jimmy, remember Miss Mullins?
Oh, the bakery.
Tasty Bake Shop?
Oh, God.
You remember that, Bill?
Who?
Miss Mullins Tasty Bake Shop. Two
No.
doors up on North Street, just above North Willard.
Oh, I thought it was Jelano's up that way. but
Jelano's
no-
was down
Jones is
farther.
further down North
Okay,
Street.
okay.
Jelano's was for the big birthday special. Miss Mullins was for the oatmeal cookies
Okay, so
And the rolls.
and the rolls.
Oh my gosh, they were wonderful.
so now how about when you have a family like that? You ever have a division of chores in the household?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Joey and I talked about this the other day. As a guy in my family, as a boy in my family, I mowed the lawn and shoveled coal. My sisters did not mow the lawn or shovel coal. My sisters did the dishes. I did not do dishes. We had that work division in our family. Did you have something similar to that in your family?
Well, we weren't very good at chores, but I do remember that Jimmy's job was always to take the trash out, and of course you'd burn it then.
Okay, yeah, you burned a
that was
55-gallon drum.
And there never would be, I would never, or my sisters would never be asked to take the trash out.
Because that was a division of labor.
Yes.
Okay.
But my mother used to say, as my father would tell us to go in and help my mother do the dishes, my mother used to say to my father, I'd prefer to be by myself.
Okay.
And so I used to say, well, I'll go up and do my homework then.
So you
But I would- but
you
I-
bailed out.
Yes.
Okay.
But I used to draw the outside duty too. I was supposed to mow the lawn, and the most hateful chore I could be asked to do or expected to do was to rake the leaves. And we had a big yard, and we had Dutch elm to thank. I gave thanks for Dutch elm disease.
Dutch elm disease killed a lot of the trees, a lot of the elm trees in Burlington.
But-
I can tell you a story about that from my experience, but go ahead.
Well, my father would go and he'd leave on a Saturday, go hunting, and expect when he came home the yard would all be raked. Well, I spent the morning playing football in the backyard. In the afternoon, we'd go over to UVM and watch at Centennial Field and watch a football
Yeah,
game.
UVM
And he would
football.
come home, and he'd say, "Well, you didn't get the." So he would tell me, "Sunday, you have to go out and rake the leaves." I said, "Well, I can't. It's servile work. You can't do servile work on a Sunday." And so I pleaded
Five.
religion that I couldn't do the raking on a Sunday because we were forbidden to do hard
That's right. You
labor.
don't work on Sunday.
So I said, the Jews who lived across the street, those kids on Saturday, you don't see them working. So one of my sisters said, Dad's out talking to Rabbi Wall. My father and Rabbi Wall were good friends. Rabbi Wall was going to the
Yep.
synagogue. And so my father came in and said, I took your case to a higher court. I spoke to Rabbi Wall about working on the Sabbath. And Rabbi Wall, after listening to my story, he said, well, he should rest 1 day a week on the Sabbath, but since he's already been resting 6 days, give him the rake.
So you didn't win on
So
that
Rabbi
one.
Wall was no help.
So Joe, how did you fit into some of this outdoor work, or were you immune to that?
I was immune,
So
definitely immune.
So what happens today? Now I try to teach my daughter how to change oil in a car.
Oh,
Maybe I've
gosh.
told you that story. I said, Ellen, this is what you get under the car, and here's this.
What would be the point? That's what
Well, I
gas
wanted
stations
to do
are
something
for.
besides the dishes. Some was
Oh.
a quote,
Are
a,
you-
ma-
are you-
a male.
These are
cho-
your early feminist years? Bill?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. But she never changed the oil since then.
No.
So into that story.
Well, I don't
But
think
at least I
my
tried.
father was not a mechanical person, and so none of us learned much about anything. He had a workshop down cellar, and I don't know what the man did down there.
Did every tool imaginable.
And he loved, you'd hear these hammers and you'd think there was going to be a new dollhouse coming out or something, but rarely did anything come out. So I don't think any of us really got any mechanical skills or taught anything like that.
Okay. Well, folks, this is 862-3966. We're coming down to the end of our program. Joey Leddy Donovan and Senator Jim Leddy are here. We're sharing experiences of way back in the day. I guess in the New North End, or was in the New North End and the Avenue. What did you think of Father Tenney when he put that Christ the King, the St. Mark's Church out in the Avenue?
My mother and father were very much a founding member of that community, and they thought very highly of Father Tenney.
I thought that was, what's he doing in sending a church way out there? There's nobody out there.
Well, the first masses, as the church was being built, were at the Heidelberg Club.
Oh, really?
That's
Okay.
That's where it started.
our parents, when they went to mass, originally they went to the Heidelberg Club, and then the church. I think I made my first communion at probably a year after the church opened.
Okay. Well, we got to wrap up, folks. Thank you for watching Stump the Chumps. We tried to give you a little bit of Burlington, of days gone by with these two natives, but man, what stories they had. Did it conjure up any thoughts in your mind? It's fun. Doing history of Burlington and trivia is good. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.